And I'm Pat.
And this is NFGeeks. All right. Thanks again, Pat, for coming on.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, being our INFP representative.
So I have a question for you.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm ready.
Sort of, what is your philosophy around sort of wanting to document the mindset of different NFs?
Oh, okay. That's great. I kind of only allude to this when I talk about it. So it's great to talk about it with an NF directly and to respond. Okay, my main quest here is to be sort of a herald, okay, for NF, to put out the call. A herald is an angel with the trumpets, we're one of those. And that's because in the common experience that NFs have, and you might have had this too, okay, and Maria might have had it and other NFs, is that, only NFs really understand other NFs, because we speak a very poetic language, and we're on a certain wavelength. And when we're not around other NFs, the rest of the world makes us think we're crazy. and you know what I mean? They tell us that we're crazy. And if you can't find other NFs, if you're like that ugly duckling and you can't find the other swans, then you start believing you're an ugly duckling.
Yeah, it feels a bit lonely.
Right.
Yeah.
It's alienating. And then you start acting crazy. You know what I mean? Because you've been alienated and you don't know any better, So part of NF, so there's two parts to that. One part of NFGeeks is to let the other NFs know that they're not crazy.
Yeah, sort of, validating their viewpoints.
Yes.
And their roles.
Absolutely. NFGeeks is all about validating NF. Okay, that doesn't mean we want to invalidate NT or SJ or SP, the other types. We're not trying to invalidate them. But this is sort of special for NFs, okay, for that. And the second part about this, and this has been harder, okay, is to empower NFs to stand up and say, hey, you know what? Our worldview is just as valid as any other orientation and methodology, and we don't have to explain it to you. It works for us. Leave us alone, and stand up to the other types. Because what happens is they say, you're irrational, you're crazy, and we all go run under our beds and cry. Because NFs are crybabies. Don't even comment about that. It's NFGeeks, and I know my NFs, and we're all crybabies. Me too. I'm a crybaby too. Right? All the NFs, crybabies. So those are my main ideas. So how does that connect with you? What do you think?
Is there any attempt to sort of bring in non-NFs to the discussion?
Oh yeah, always. If you watch, there's I hope to get, ideally, I'd like to get all 16 types on at least once.
That would be excellent.
Yes. Yeah. Certainly. I definitely want to do at least the 4 temperaments. So I want somebody who's an SP, someone who's an SJ, minimally, But I would like to get all 16 on. So yes, they can engage in the dialogue. But NFGeeks is specific to the NF world, So it's not so much, I want a dialogue, but it's also, it's like, okay, here's NF experiencing ISTJ. Here's NF experiencing NT. Here's NF experiencing whatever, So I'm trying to, it does have an NF focus. And admittedly, it's totally subjective. There's no objective theory. Stop talking about that. There's nothing, it's a talk show. Asking that objectivity is like asking Ellen to be objective, okay? It doesn't apply. All right, so what do you think about that in terms of empowerment and craziness? And how does that connect to you?
Well, sort of, maybe going back about 10 years ago, having first taken the Myers-Briggs, it was sort of a revelation at that point that...
Really?
That, both that society could be broken down into sort of groupable subsets of sort of mindsets, philosophies, ways of viewing the world. And that there were other people that were just as weird and bizarre as I am. And, have similar experiences in the world.
Yes.
So for me, that really was empowering to maybe I didn't have an example sitting right next to me while I was taking the test, but, the idea that, statistically in the world there were at least a few people that were like me.
Yes, and that's why...
So that was really therapeutic in a way.
Yes, and that's why I want to point out the real wonderful good that you have done today by allowing me to interview you, because INFPs around the world are feeling validated this very second. Absolutely. In other words, what you're saying is what the INFPs are feeling right now watching you. So you're really giving back to them in a way. See, that's what I mean by hero. So that's what I'm talking about. The INFPs don't feel that way about me. They're happy doing INFPs, but they want someone who represents them.
That sort of brings me to my next question for you.
Oh,
Mark.
sure. Okay.
So why is it NFGeeks? If we're trying to empower people...
Okay.
I mean, I understand we should be embracing this term. It's something that gets applied to us all the time. Yes. Lord knows I feel like a geek most of the time. But, why isn't it NF Heroes or NF Champions?
Okay, sure. I have here's the truth. Okay. And the name of NFGeeks was invented by the co-founder, Dave. Dave, who, if you watch the other videos, he came up with that name. Yes. And I was trying to think of names, and all my names were stupid. Okay, I was like Fellowship of the Ring of NF. You know what I mean? Like, horrible. They were terrible. When it comes to creativity, I got to warm up. I have a lot of false starts. I don't just get it. I got to okay. But he immediately said, no, Mike, NF Geeks. And he's an INFJ. So I said, well, why? And he says, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, he couldn't even communicate it. He just said, look, you got to understand hipsters and the younger generation. This is what he said. And he said, geeks does not mean what you think it means. It means something else. It'll resonate. It'll be fine. Watch. No one will ever criticize it.
I mean, that is something that, I've witnessed in my own lifetime. When I was 12 years old, you didn't want to be a geek.
Right, yeah.
But, suddenly it's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know why it became cool, but...
Yeah, it did. And so he named it, and that's it. And he's right. No one's ever really given a criticism about it. And I get lots of emails criticizing other things, but never the name. So I kept it because, I don't know, it was his invention, and I think he was right. But yeah, I know. I always worry about it, too, because when I look at the channel, it's one thing to know it's called NFGeeks, but when I go on the channel to upload the videos or respond to comments, there it is in letters. Like, another thing to read it, and I always think, oh, especially since I'm the only one doing this, then I'm like NFGeek. So like the only one. But it seems to work,
So, besides being a nerd, being a geek,
sure.
Are there other sort of character traits that you find in common between other NFs? That non-NFs don't display quite as often.
Yes, I've talked about this in a couple of other videos, but NFs are in tune to the world in a wavelength that doesn't require explanation between NFs. Not a lot of explanation. Usually it's when dealing with people. You know what I mean? If two NFs feel, wow, this person's a bad egg, that's a bad egg.
So, would you say that other personality types among themselves in a group wouldn't have that sort of unspoken expectation of what things actually were?
No, I don't think so. I think it would be much more of a verbal expectation. It might be a physical one. I think SPs, for example, are very physical with their bodies, and I think they said that it becomes like their own intelligence. Their intelligence is in their body, in terms of their kinesthetic stuff. But I don't think they have that sort of weird vibe that NFs have, that, where we just know something is wrong or something is happening.
It's time for lunch.
Right, without communicating it necessarily, I think that's...
It's like, oh, you're hungry, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're much more in tune with each other. And we're in tune with other people too. But I think that's one of the commonalities I see with NFs.
Do you see any other?
Oh, sure. I think NFs always have a leaning towards some kind of mysticism or mystical thing, or the mystery of the universe, whatever it is. To see, Maria had a great line for shamanism. She said it's to be able to see in the dark. And I think that, I don't know if NFs can all see in the dark, but we all can see around the corner. You know what I mean? Like, there's this thing called reality, and then, wait, isn't that a shadow, right? What's behind that? Wait a minute, there's something there. Like, I think NFs can do that. Do you find that you can do that? Do you know what I'm saying? What I'm trying to say?
Find it easy to sort of get into a mindset where reality is actually illusion. I can sort of take that perspective.
Sure.
I mean, I guess part of the problem of being empathetic is you get to see both sides most of the time, and you can't ever choose.
Yeah, true. Oh, that's particularly true of the perceivers of two P's together. So, for example, one thing that would be really horrible, I find, when I'm with an INFP is like being at a restaurant with INFP takes forever. With me too, as a perceiver, yes, because we would be going back and forth. This is the other INFPs that I've been romantically involved in, but it would be like oh, I don't know, should we get the chicken? And the steak looks good. And what about the shish kebab? And I don't know, maybe we'll just get a salad. You know, the waitress has to come back like 3 times. Every time I've been with an INFP.
That's interesting, because I'm just like, whatever you want. It's cool.
Okay,
I'm
right,
good.
but
I'm good.
That's great, because honestly, if I had a J in my life to just choose off the menu like I'm 5 years old, I'd love it.
Okay.
I'd love it, You're going to get the hot doggy and the hamburgery. Great, thank God you're here. Because otherwise I'd be ordering ice cream. I don't know. Right, okay, but perceivers, the NF, and this is what's common between you and I as an INFP and ENFP, we have the ability to see all sides. It's hard to choose sometimes because everything seems equal all the time. Do I do this? Do I do that?
You never want us on a jury?
Oh, yeah, no, terrible. We'll go back and forth.
Behind the gavel.
No.
Well, the plaintiff makes a good case,
yes.
but the defendant does too.
Right.
And
I
both
can't
have rights. And
I'm gonna have to think about this till tomorrow. And then tomorrow, right? It never comes. The justice system would grind to a halt.
Screeching halt.
Yes, absolutely terrible.
Or just let everybody go and give them another shot.
Yeah, that's right. See, that's very NFP too. They might have a good side,
Well, they were just having a bad.
Right, we can help them out. They can be right. Even the INFJ and the ENFJ would be jail. They would send people to jail. Maria would send people to jail.
Yes, I'm very. When it comes to decisions on the law and things like that, I kind of see it
cut and dry.
Exactly. If you were on Krypton, you'd send everybody to the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, it's like if you were a total jerk and you did a totally terrible thing, you should. There's repercussions, so you're gonna get them.
Yeah, Pat and I are not.
And me, I'm gonna let it slide.
Right, we let things. NFPs do let things. Both INFP and ENFP let things slide all the time, and so that leads to an interesting idea I want to talk to you about, Pat, because this is again I've had a lot of interaction with INFP in all sorts of different ways. There's an innuendo in that, but what I find about ENFP as INFP is that if our functions, if our psychological energy is faced out into the world, it runs parallel. And we see the world similarly. We're not in disagreement about the world. If we're intuiting a person, I find when I'm an INFP and ENFP and we both say, boy, something's wrong with that person, we're both right. I mean, it's right.
Yeah.
The problem is when that ability is pointed at each other, I find it goes wrong.
Okay.
Between ENFP and INFP. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's too much. It's like having two magnets on the wrong side, they repel.
Yeah.
Maybe like you know what I mean? Like a south and a south. I don't know if it's
I hear.
So all right, how does that connect to you? What do you think about that? Does that
I mean, I don't know if I go through enough sort of cognitive awareness of the other categories of people around me.
Well, let's think about this. Well, how does what I said resonate about you and I? Because you and I have known each other a while. We're both NFPs. Do you find that we run parallel and that sometimes we don't? Or how does that connect?
I mean, how often do we turn towards each other?
Well, right now. Well, no, we're
Literally,
not.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Well, all right. Well, that's different, right? Not a lot. Luckily,
No, but I have found in the past that we sort of see the outside world in a similar manner.
Right. It doesn't mean we're in 100% agreement, but I find that your values and my values don't contradict. You know what I mean? They run in a similar direction. There's no perpendicularness going on. Doesn't mean they're the same, but they slide together. They don't ever cross each other over. There's no collisions. There's no T-boning. There's no T-boning.
Parallel onward into infinity.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Do you? I know I can feel it. Do you feel it? Like honestly.
Now that you sort of bring it up, yeah.
Between us.
Between all our NF brethren.
Oh, see, that's great. That's great INFP, right? Include.
Yeah, all inclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
Include.
Can't leave them out.
Right. Is anybody? Are you thinking about what the other NFs are feeling, Mike? Right.
You should be.
I try to. I do try. It's not always easy. Because I feel like I have to. I'm trying to motivate NFs to be stronger, and that means I feel like I have to be harder on them, but I know how sensitive they are, and they cry at a drop of a hat.
You're just going to push them away.
Right, so I try to be sensitive about it, but I think that our consciousness is valid, and so we should stand up.
Who's to say it's not?
Exactly, that's what I've been trying to say for like weeks now. All right, so any final words you want to give, Pat, about this, about NF-ness or anything?
Well, I love your project, Mike.
Oh,
I
great.
wish you the best with it going forward.
Yeah.
And I hope you fill in your entire 16.
Oh, great. Thank you. This is a wonderful, happy thing to say, Pat. Thank you. And I
well.
hope you get to come on again.
Oh,
You know?
Me too.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Yeah.